Welcome to the Mobile Games Playbook in association with Liftoff. Join us as we uncover the latest trends in user acquisition, monetization, and mobile game design.
Hello, and welcome to the Mobile Games Playbook. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. This is a podcast all about what makes a great mobile game, what is and isn't working for mobile game designers, and all of the latest trends. I'm your host, John Jordan, and joining me today, I have two experts. I have Christie Crable, Activations Manager at Liftoff. How's it going, Christie?
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
And also, suitably attired, we have to say, we have Kentaro Sugiara, who is a UA Manager at Rovio. How's it going, Kentaro?
Hey, all good. How are you doing?
Got the official blazer on there. Telling people that today we're talking about user acquisition. I guess that was giving the game away by giving them your job title. So UA in the mobile space has always been one of those sort of evergreen subjects. We're all sort of coming back to it. It's always very dynamic. There's always sort of new things happening, but I guess there's always some sort of best practice we can talk about, and we'll sort of go through that in today's podcast. I would say we're going to talk, I think, specifically more about the sort of the casual game sort of UA. Obviously, there's an enormous range of product in mobile gaming, and there's very sort of specific ways in which you might want to address that for different kind of genres, but we'll sort of keep it on the casual level today. So I wondered to kick off, Kentaro, if you as the sort of expert day-to-day sort of UA manager at Rovio, could you sort of at a sort of high level tell us some of the trends that you've been seeing over the last few years, because you've had a fairly decent career in the sector. So what are the sort of the headline figures, the headline trends that you've been seeing?
So I think since few years I've been observing the high competition in the market. The competition in the market is getting bigger and bigger. So especially in the casual space now, the CPI is increasing. So if you want to have sustainable UA campaign, you also need some product update. You need to have higher ARPU. That's the one trend. And to reduce CPI, some casual developer introducing the minigame or other things. So because basically you make a game more for the broad audience. So that's one trend I've been observing.
And Christie, I mean, you're not in it sort of on a day-to-day level in the way that Kentaro is, but what do you see? I guess sort of one step removed from your overview sort of aspect of.
No, I definitely want to echo what Kentaro is saying. I think we're seeing a lot of casual games add a minigame element to really expand their audiences. So good example of this, we're seeing Royal Match do this. They added a casino minigame recently. So it just helps them to expand their audience to target users who might be have different motivations or be interested in different kinds of game features and get them into the game and then get them hooked.
And I guess this sort of already sort of highlights maybe I don't know, I would say it's attention, maybe it's not attention, but obviously sort of UA is you have a game that you're sort of really proud of and you want to get that game in front of the biggest audience you can because you think this game's going to be great, they're going to love it, we're going to, sort of generate revenue either through in-app purchases or advertising. But equally, you sort of then get in this sort of situation where, as sort of Kentaro is talking about, it's very competitive as a market, and there's probably other people in that same genre who obviously think their game's great as well, and then you're sort of in this tension of how specifically do we sort of advertise that game, or it's interesting that people are saying, well, we'll actually modify our game to add some more gameplay, so we can then sort of change our advertising. So it's sort of quite an interesting sort of creative tension about how UA is now feeding back into product design, which I think that to me for a total outsider seems like quite a big change that's happened over recent years.
Yeah, no, I think that push and pull is important, though. I mean, the UA managers are on the front lines. They're the ones who know which kinds of creative resonate well with the target user. And so if they're seeing that a particular feature that's highlighted in creative is working, or they're seeing that a particular minigame is resonating, and they can give that feedback back to the product team and expand the product, I think that feedback loop is really important. we're seeing that actually with Kentaro, your game Angry Birds 2. You're in that market space, but I think Angry Birds has done a really great job of expanding with mini games in the PvP and PvE space. So like adding that level of competition that keeps those users engaged and wanting to come back and wanting to play.
Can you talk a bit more about that, Kentaro? How was, because I remember when Angry Birds 2 came out, it was sort of what you'd expect an Angry Birds sort of game to be, and can you talk a bit about how that has sort of changed as you want to expand it to new audiences with different marketing, and how that sort of feedback loop into the product has worked?
So Angry Birds 2 has a lot of the game feature. So as Christie mentioned, we do have the player versus player function, so which is called the arena. We also have the normal like side gameplay. We also have Tower of the Fortune, which is a little bit like like a roulette or dice function. So basically, you have a few cards, and you need to choose one card, and you get some reward. So we try to expand our audience base by adding new features. And from UA side, specifically for creatives, we try to enhance the element we have in the game and try to attract different kind of users.
For you being part of the UA team, how does that feedback work when you're talking to the product team? Have they had to be sort of more flexible in? Do they find that a sort of a positive thing where they go, "Oh, great, we can add these new things into the game"? Or maybe sometimes I can imagine some creatives sort of going, "Well, this is my game, and I'm not sure I want to add a mini game." I mean, how does that sort of flow happen?
Product teams are very keen to what's happening in the UA, and especially what's happening in the UA creative. So we do have like a regular session talk about creatives. So in terms of a mini game, at this moment we are still developing with Angry Birds 2. So at Rovio, we do see some great result in terms of user engagement with the mini games. With the AB2, it's a little bit challenging. So there's a few reasons. So one of the reasons is that our game is the landscape, and most of other placements are portrait. So we need to adjust the UI from portrait to landscape or vice versa. So depending on what kind of idea we have. So if the idea is more from the UI side, then it's the portrait, and then we need to find a way how to make this portrait the playable mini game into the landscape. And if the idea from the product team, the vice versa. So this is one of the challenge. And also we do see the lack of mini game. It's not a problem, but the problem is the mini game, which can. The problem is the finding the mini game which can scale on a UA, and which also attract the existing user in a product side. So I think that's one of the biggest challenge we have at this moment.
Coming back to specifically Angry Birds 2, I guess one of the advantages you have in that game is you have a very recognisable characters. So probably some of the most recognisable characters in mobile gaming. Obviously, Angry Birds, one of the big, probably one of the first big, mobile game successes, and whatever we are now, over a decade on, very recognisable globally. Is that something that sort of you can leverage in terms of your UA, that you can, you don't have to have this sort of context where it's a game I've never heard of, and who are these characters? I mean, how is that like a positive thing that you can use?
Having global recognizable IP is helping our UA operation. More specifically, we do see better IPM thanks to the Angry Bird brand. So we do have some internal study that's what's the IPM difference between the Angry Bird versus non-Angry Bird creatives, and we do see significant performance uplift with Angry Bird characters.
That's what you hope to see. So maybe breaking a bit out from Angry Birds. I mean, Christie, I don't know if it's something you can do. Discuss one of the when I say sort of tension. One of the things I guess we have seen, and sort of I guess mentioning no names, but we sometimes I guess we can see the UA creative and the actual game actually sort of diverging. And I guess over the years, sometimes that's sort of become a sort of funny meme, and sometimes not. I mean, do we think generally now people have sort of found the sweet spot where, you know, you're not sort of selling someone a game that you can't then replicate in the game? Because obviously the easiest thing is to just make a fantastic advert. You go, oh wow, that looks amazing, and then you go to the game and go, oh well, wonder where that bit of the game is.
Totally, yeah. And if you had a great advert and it didn't match what the actual gameplay was, your user retention would be terrible. But I think, you know, one of the interesting new trends we're seeing is long form video content and ads. So those 90-second ad spaces, and that gives brands a lot of room for experimentation. So you can keep that core gameplay, you can make sure that the ad is not misleading, but you can also start off with something splashy, whether that's like an interactive piece or even like an influencer, some UGC, a creator responding to a particular piece of gameplay. Then you can show that core gameplay, you can highlight those well-known brand images or those specific characters, and then have a call to action. And that 90-second long video is really giving advertisers more room to kind of play and have fun while still staying true to the core gameplay.
And I guess the use of things like influencers, again, a double-edged sword, but I guess that sort of, if you don't have a great brand like Angry Birds, that sort of gets around that a little bit, because you're like, oh, it's, I mean, I'm not into influencers, but, you know, people go, oh, that's what they're playing. That's so it's sort of, the advert is not directly necessarily getting you into the game. So there's a wider sort of creative, you know, horizon.
Totally. And I think that UGC style is so ubiquitous now. People are spending tons of time on TikTok or on Instagram. And so when they see an ad with a creator and they're hearing the creator react to the gameplay or say why they're so excited about playing a particular game, it's just so familiar that it really resonates with them. And we're seeing a lot of success on the DSP side running creatives that include influencer faces in them.
They're becoming meta brands, I guess, across the industry. Kentaro, we sort of had the first sort of mention there of different sort of channels, TikTok obviously having a big one over the last few years. But how do you see that sort of landscape happening now? Are there particular channels that are still sort of hotter than others, or is it part of UA that you just, you know, you go where eyeballs are, you don't have particular, you know, favorite places to operate?
Yeah, so TikTok is a very interesting network, and also same type of challenging network to manage. So like, you know, obviously AB2 is already 9 years old, and our audience getting older. So we try to get a young audience, and I think TikTok is a great channel to acquire young audience. And we try to differentiate creative on TikTok. So we use more UGC contents. We have a good partnership with TikTok, and they're trying to help us to come up with new creative idea with the UGC contents, and yeah, we do see some performance uplift with that. So definitely, this is something we are focusing at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, what do you sort of say? We've been talking about doing some stuff on TikTok, maybe targeting a sort of younger audience. For that sort of, are you just looking there to drive downloads, or are you looking then sort of beyond the downloads to see, you know, how you're monetizing them, or what other sort of results you're looking for to tell you that was a good campaign? Because I guess that's, at the end of the day, that's sort of the key thing is, did that campaign meet our goals? So what are those goals that you're trying to drive?
We are running a TikTok campaign as a business as usual campaign. So meaning that we are optimizing the campaign towards our ROI goal. So we do see some product update on TikTok side, and the product update help us to find a valuable user on TikTok. And together with the creative optimization, the performance is getting better, and we do believe that we don't have any problem to run like successful and sustainable campaign on TikTok.
Christie, we talked quite a bit about TikTok. Is that really still where the majority of people you think are looking at, or is there? I guess there's always sort of, I think, a balance between, you know, the different sort of tools that these people have.
I definitely think there's a balance, and I think of platforms like TikTok as more of like the brand awareness. So maybe the goals there for many brands are ITI or IPM, whereas the goal when you're running ads on a DSP might be that D7 ROAS or user retention. And so brands are looking at how they weigh the budgets across those different channels to fit the right marketing mix. Liftoff, we're a DSP, so we're more focused on those downstream or down funnel goals. And so looking at user retention and maybe some of those key indicator metrics that might indicate that a user is going to retain or going to become a whale. Did they pass a certain level? Did they interact with the game on day 2, day 3? Did they take a certain action or participate maybe in a certain mini game or PvP competition? And those indicators can really help to identify, if a campaign is going to be successful in the long term, especially when, some developers are looking maybe at even 365 days out, what's the lifetime value of a user? So how can we identify those key indicator metrics in the beginning that help make sure that we're in the right direction?
Mm-hmm. And for those of us who are not experts, day 7 ROAS, unpick that for us.
Sure. So day 7 ROAS would be the return on the ad spend after 7 days after we've retained a user. So what return are we getting 7 days after that user makes the install?
And that would be return in terms of them looking at ads, in-app purchase, both?
Either looking at ads or making an in-app purchase. It really depends on how the app is monetizing. But yes, what return or what profit are we making from that user that we got through that UA campaign?
The sort of the scale of that from 7 days to 360, that's quite a bit of elastic.
Totally. And I think, again, here we talked about like the push and pull before, but there's a push and pull of that optimizing campaigns quickly and making quick decisions, and then looking at that longer term user retention. So there's a lot that a UA manager can do on the UA side to optimize campaigns, to switch out creatives, to target new audiences. But then again, that feedback loop comes back to the product. Once the UA team has done the hard work of getting the user into the app, how does the product team do the hard work of keeping the user in the game, keeping them entertained, keeping them coming back? And I think, Kentaro, that goes back to some of the things you were talking about before with new product features, mini games, competitions, those user engagement features that really keep users retained.
You're just making mini games to make your sort of, initial UA ad looks more appealing. It is, the whole point is a sort of ongoing sort of situation where you're getting them in and then they go, oh, that's why I came here, because I saw the ad and liked that, and then they hopefully go off and then find other bits of the game that are, you didn't advertise. Kentaro, where do you sort of sit in that sort of D7 to D365? Where you think there's a particularly sweet spot in there? Does it depend, I guess, on the product to some degree?
Yeah, I think it depends on the product and also payback period. Like, how long you can wait for the money come back.
One thing that I'm sort of always interested in, I mean, you mentioned it sort of a little bit, is sort of you use the term switching creative, Christie, and I kind of wonder, now we're in this sort of programmable sort of world where, and I guess we maybe get onto a bit of this with talking about AI later, but how just automated are these situations? How quickly are you just sort of churning stuff through without it becoming more like a black box where you're sort of not too, I don't know, maybe people aren't too worried about exactly what you're sort of serving up to people. You're just sort of almost looking at, what is your day 7 ROAS? And are we quite at that stage yet, or is that, have the robots taken over in terms of just serving up that sort of stuff? And because imagine, we've mentioned a few channels, but there's all these different social platforms out there. You may be running things globally. You've got all these different sort of demographics and different age groups. I mean, it becomes this massive matrix of thousands and thousands of data points.
I don't think that AI is taking creative teams from 0 to 1. I don't think that we are in a spot where we're plugging words into an AI and just shooting out creative. But I do think where AI really helps get the UA team scale is in iteration. So whether that's localizations of language or small modifications to particular pieces of creative, it's a really great way for teams who don't have a ton of resources to churn out ads at scale that are more targeted to specific niche audiences. And especially when it comes to language localization, we've seen great tools that are able to quickly take a creator's voice and put it into a different language that sounds like their voice and helps it to feel more authentic to that target audience. So AI is a great tool for, I think, UA teams to expand upon the creative and the work that they're already doing. And I also think that AI can be really helpful for creative generation, if you put in ideas that are already working, AI can help to iterate on those scripts or to make new iterations of specific campaigns or concepts that are working. So again, I don't think it's a 0 to 1. I don't think you can just load up ChatGPT and suddenly have a great UA campaign. The creative brain behind most UA campaigns is still really important, but it's a great tool to enhance and leverage and amplify what's already going on.
Kentaro, have you just Rovio have a secret button that they press and AI comes out the other end? Not yet.
So I think I'm aligning what Christie mentioned. So I think still AI, at least for the UA creative production, AI is still like limited. So it's a very useful and powerful tool for asset productions or making a simple variation. But still not something like, we can rely on from 0 to 1 creative production. So yeah, this is what I see at this moment. So at Rovio, like, we do have some internal AI tool. It's a super interesting. Like, you put some word and like generate some AI image. I love to use some AI tool, but still, it's more like supportive tool than something standalone tool which can make the UI creatives.
Do you think that's just sort of a limitation of the current technology and the fact that it's sort of mainly sort of, I guess, a generalized sort of thing and maybe not specific enough for what you would need for sort of game assets? I mean, if we get ChatGPT 6, does that take us from 0 to 1? Is it just that we're in this sort of current situation where it's just not quite at that level? Or if that is the case, is that good for the industry where you just hit a button and it just goes off and does its thing? And would that be a positive? I guess that's a more philosophical question, I suppose. But have a crack at it.
I have to say, AI is as good as the inputs. And you find that when you're using ChatGPT just for daily life, if you type a question, it might return a mediocre answer. And then if you give it a lot more instruction and a lot more guidance, you'll get something much better. So a UA team that has a lot of brand history, has a lot of already created brand assets, knows what resonates with the user, has all of the data and the history behind what makes a good creative, and can input all of that into a UA or into an AI tool, I think the creative output is going to be so much better than if there's a new studio that's up and coming and they just say, hey, make us some creatives for this game. The output is not gonna, it's gonna feel like AI. People are gonna know that they're watching something that's not real. So I think having the knowledge and the data and the brand, the established brand, really will help those AI outputs be more impactful for UA teams.
Yeah, it seems to make some sort of sense that if the sort of teams with obviously sort of smart teams, you hope, and with those with sort of a longer history of sort of how they deal with their brand assets, that's going to result in something less generic. Because I guess one of the problems, at least with the sort of ChatGPT gen stuff at the moment, is it does look very generic if you just take the generic, output. And obviously you can change that with the prompts, but it would seem to be, at the moment at least, you can end up with very sort of generic outputs, which obviously if you're trying to do UA and make your game stand out is, I guess you find that a bit with RPGs. They all sort of look, the characters also look the same. You get like, here's the elf character, here's the dwarf character, and it, it's almost the opposite of what you want, isn't it? I suppose.
I think where AI can also help is in terms of data analysis. And Kentaro, I'm sure you can validate this, but UA teams spend tons of time in Excel or looking at spreadsheets or pulling large data sets, and those can be fed into AI tools and compared. AI tools can now read images, so you can also insert your creative and share with the AI the data of particular creatives and get some ideas and recommendations from it that then the real teams can use to take and make smarter decisions.
AI is good for like a data analyst and also like checking codes. So I personally use ChatGPT every day for reviewing my code. because my code is always broken. So, but like to finding a mistake in my code, it bits. Sometimes it's time consuming. So I just write a code check, ChatGPT, paste the code, and they will find out my mistake very quickly.
In say 5 years' time, do you think that it will sort of have radically changed sort of the job you do? Or is it just going to be something where it just gets better as an assistant? I guess, maybe this isn't something to do particularly with AI, but I think in general, are we at this sort of cusp where, we have AI assistants now? Does it become transformative more than that? I mean, I'm not an AI expert, I don't know. So
yeah, I think the UA manager job is getting more like not easier, but more simple and simple. I don't remember when I started working as a UA manager almost 10 years ago. I was buying a traffic CPC or CPM, maybe a little bit CPI, and then started, it's the company started to develop the product, targeting for CPA and ROAS. But before, I was checking the CPI and I was checking the payer rate, like everything in the manual. But now, I'm still doing that, but most of the optimization part was done on the network side. So that not just the AI, but because of thanks to the better technology, the UA manager's job is more simple in terms of the data analyzing and also optimization. But again, it doesn't mean that that our job is getting easier. I think now we need more focus on the creatives, how we can attract the new user. So we need to be more creatives. We need to be more creative.
Everyone has to be creative in a way, in a more structured and better way for the products that they are producing, rather than, I guess, that's the specialization that happens over time. To begin with, everyone sort of has a sort of roughly the same tools, and it doesn't differentiate their product. And I guess that's really what you're doing with UA, which is just a very specialized form of marketing. Is it's just like becoming more focused and what actually is it that it's our product, and what actually is it that we are trying to excite people about, which is sort of coming back to where we sort of started out from. Any thoughts on that, Christie? You seem slightly more AI skeptical, but I mean, in a sense, it is going to impact the games industry in general, and the games industry will always need to be sort of working out ways of advertising its products to find an audience for itself. So,
and Kentaro, what you're saying is right. Is not that your job has become necessarily easier, but just that these tools free you up to be more strategic, and you have to be more strategic because everyone else has the same tools. And so the industry is just going to get more and more competitive as these tools allow teams to spend less time in the weeds and the data and more time thinking big picture, making strategic decisions. They're going to be quickly iterating on creatives or expanding their creatives to different geos. So I think AI could potentially just, expand the market and make that job, uniquely specialized and a little bit more challenging.
That sounds good though. That sounds positive for UA managers. It takes away the sort of boring, tedious stuff like checking new code, and it allows you to become a UA visionary.
Yeah, like a less manual work, but a more creative work.
Definitely.
There we go. Well, I think that's a good place to conclude our conversation on the trends of UA. Thanks very much to Christie and Kentaro for our discussion on UA. Maybe got a bit philosophical, I don't know. I think that's good. And thanks to you for watching, listening to the podcast, however you are consuming it. Every episode we are talking about what's going on in mobile gaming, which is obviously the biggest part of the games industry and the most dynamic as well. So I hope you're enjoying them. Do subscribe via your podcast channel of choice, and come back next time. See you then.